Welcome to the channel. A former Vatican Guard has broken his silence, revealing a shocking account of Pope Francis's final moments. What he witnessed is unlike anything you've ever heard about the Holy See. The account is shaking the world, and it may make you look at the Vatican in a whole new way. Pope Francis's last look, according to a Vatican Guard, was not one of peace, but of utter terror. What happened in those fateful moments? In the holiest place on earth? This shocking confession is shattering the years-long veil of silence surrounding the Vatican. What you are about to hear may make you never look at the Holy See the same way again. If you also feel chills after this story, leave a comment 1 to share your thoughts. If you think this is just a coincidence, comment 0 to let us know. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next mysteries. The truth may be hidden behind each ancient wall. In February 2025, the 88-year-old Pope was admitted to Rome's Gemelli Hospital. As with any public figure, especially one as influential as the Pope, his hospitalization immediately sparked intense public concern. But this was more than just a routine health crisis. The Pope was suffering from a complicated clinical condition, a respiratory infection later described as bilateral pneumonia. The Pope was only able to make a brief public appearance on Holy Thursday when he visited a prison in Rome. It was his only public appearance outside the Vatican since his hospitalization. During the visit, we have rare footage of the Pope speaking about his condition. After he finished, he blessed them. As he left, the Pope asked his car to stop so he could greet the press. The prison that Pope Francis visited was not one without serious tensions. The Vatican, which had initially kept quiet in keeping with tradition, found itself in the unusual position of facing a growing wave of speculation, much of it taking place in the unregulated spaces of social media platforms like Telegram and WhatsApp. Whispers began to circulate. Was the Pope really alive? Had he died? And was the Vatican covering up his death for reasons unknown? These rumors quickly turned into a digital wildfire as March 2025 approached, spreading through encrypted messaging apps and finding fertile ground among skeptics and conspiracy theorists. What makes these rumors particularly intriguing is the Pope's known health history, notably the partial lung removal he underwent as a young man in Argentina. This medical history has always left his respiratory system particularly vulnerable. And now, in the winter of 2025, it seems that vulnerability is being tested to the limit. But the story gets even stranger with the emergence of a number of individuals who have thrust themselves into the center of the story. Perhaps most prominent is a figure calling himself the 8th King of Rome, a self-described trash influencer named Simone Basile. The man claimed to have conducted a personal investigation, visiting the hospital only to declare that the Pope was not actually there, fueling speculation about a potential cover-up. Consider what these rumors suggest: that the Vatican, with its centuries of institutional expertise, orchestrated an elaborate hoax to conceal the Pope's death. But to what end? Theories range from buying time for political infighting within the Roman Curia to preventing a global panic among the world's 1.3 billion Catholics. The speculation became so intense that even Cardinal Gianfranco Ravasi, a prominent church intellectual and former president of the Pontifical Council for Culture, felt compelled to speak out, albeit in a way that acknowledged the absurdity of it. They say that we, the Roman Curia, keep Francis in cold storage to continue our intrigue, he said. The statement, ironically, was not an admission, but rather an emphasis on the bizarre nature of the claims circulating online. Rumors of security breaches at the hospital added fuel to the fire. It was reported that a Vatican Guard had leaked the information, suggesting that the usual tight security during papal hospitalizations had been breached, leading some to question whether this indicated something was amiss. What made the story particularly intriguing was not just the rumors, but the Vatican's unprecedented response. Faced with a crisis of confidence, the Holy See broke with centuries of tradition. Instead of maintaining its usual secrecy about the Pope's health issues, the Vatican opted for a strategy of radical transparency. Daily bulletins began to be issued from the Vatican press office, providing detailed updates on Pope Francis's condition. These were not carefully edited diplomatic statements, but rather startlingly detailed medical reports, including information that previous Vatican authorities would have considered inappropriate to share, such as the Pope inhaling his own vomit during his illness. The Vatican's communications strategy accelerated on March 10, 2025. Are you shocked by the shocking revelations from the Vatican Guard's testimony about Pope Francis's final moments? Leave a comment now. Number 2. If you believe this truth is just the tip of the iceberg, or number 5 if you think the Vatican has been controlling everything all along. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next shocking secrets from the Holy See. On that day, they not only released a written update, but also provided actual visual and audio evidence. A photo and a voice recording of the Pope declaring that his condition had improved. The unusual move underscored how seriously the Vatican takes rumors, investing significant resources to combat what it sees as dangerous misinformation. This unprecedented transparency shows that the Vatican understands that in the digital age, silence can sometimes be more telling than words. As March progressed, Vatican News reported on March 15th that the Pope's condition had stabilized with gradual improvements from his treatments, even noting that the reduced frequency of news releases should be interpreted as a positive sign. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the crisis, both medical and informational, was easing. Indeed, by March 22, 2025, multiple sources, including the New York Times and NPR, reported that Pope Francis had been discharged from the hospital with doctor's orders for 2 months of rest. The Pope even made several public appearances, greeting pilgrims and seemingly quashing outlandish claims of his death. The Vatican's transparency strategy had worked, demonstrating that the Pope was alive, albeit recovering. But the story didn't end there. Unfortunately, in what can only be described as a dramatic irony, Pope Francis died today, April 21, 2025, at his residence, the Doma Sancti Marthae. The announcement was made by Cardinal Kevin Farrell on Vatican media and was quickly picked up by international news agencies such as Reuters. This development makes for a complicated story. The rumors from March were wrong when they circulated. The Pope was alive at the time, as the Vatican rightly maintained. But his death today, coming so soon after those rumors, has an ominous echo that will surely be taken as confirmation by previous conspiracy theorists. They were wrong about the timing, but in a strange way, they predicted what would happen just a few weeks later. The timing is important here. The Pope was hospitalized in February. Rumors of his death spread in March. He was discharged on March 22nd and died on April 21st. This sequence raises questions about the evolution of his health in his final weeks at the Vatican. Was there something that was not disclosed? Was the improvement that the Vatican announced really temporary, or just a media stunt to calm public opinion? These questions will continue to be dissected in the coming weeks, as the Catholic world begins its mourning process and reflects on the legacy of Pope Francis. Was there a relapse? Was the timing of his death part of a larger transition of power within the Church? Was it simply the culmination of health challenges that have plagued the 88-year-old Pope for years? Was the Pope's death really due to pneumonia, or was that the official story? Francis's final days. The morning of April 21st, 2025, Easter Monday on the Catholic calendar, began like any other at the Vatican, with the early goings-on in the daily routine within the hallowed walls of the world's smallest sovereign state. But by 7:35, everything had changed. Pope Francis, the 266th pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church, was pronounced dead at his residence, the Doma Sanctae Marthae, ending a remarkable reign that began with his election on March 13, 2013. The announcement was made by Cardinal Kevin Farrell via Vatican media and quickly confirmed by international news agencies such as Reuters. The 88-year-old pontiff died of complications described as a respiratory infection, ending a health journey that had captivated the world since he was hospitalized in February. The timing of Pope Francis's death makes for a particularly complex story when set against the backdrop of rumors dating back to March. Claims of his premature death, vigorously denied by the Vatican at the time, now take on a worryingly prophetic tone, even if they were false in their immediate assertions. The Pope was actually alive in March. Conspiracy theorists had predicted what would happen just weeks later, creating a disturbing symmetry, almost ironically designed. The timing raised inevitable questions about the Pope's true condition in the last month of his life. After being discharged from the hospital on March 22nd, with a 2-month rest period, his death came much sooner than the predicted recovery period. Was there a sudden relapse? Was his condition more serious than was publicly acknowledged after his discharge, or was this simply the unpredictable progression of illness in an elderly patient with pre-existing respiratory weaknesses? What we know comes largely from a March 27, 2025, New York Times article that quoted the Pope's doctor as saying that Francis came close to death during his hospitalization. The revelation, made after his discharge but before his death, suggests that his condition was actually more serious than the real-time updates initially described. This shows that even as the Vatican tries to deny rumors of the Pope's death, it is also facing a medical condition that has brought him very close to the end it is denying. The Vatican now faces a delicate communications challenge: how to acknowledge the Pope's death without inadvertently giving way to the very conspiracy theories it has worked so hard to dispel. The timing, rumored death in March, actual death in April, creates a hole in the story that skeptics and conspiracy theorists will surely exploit. They said he died in March and denied it. Now they say he died in April. Why should we believe them? This predictable line of questioning poses a unique challenge to credibility. The situation is further complicated by the Vatican's historical reputation as a hotbed of intrigue. For centuries, the inner workings of the Holy See have been shrouded in secrecy, with decisions made behind closed doors and information tightly controlled. While Pope Francis has sought to increase transparency during his pontificate, the institutional legacy of secrecy creates fertile ground for skepticism, especially in times of transition like the present. Notably, throughout his pontificate, Francis has faced not only health challenges but also security threats. In his 2024 autobiography, Sparer Hope, he claimed that British intelligence and Iraqi police foiled a plot involving 2 suicide bombers targeting his March 2021 visit to Mosul, Iraq. Although former Nineveh governor Najim al-Jabouri denied the plot, his statement underscored the risks involved in Francis's interfaith outreach efforts, especially in unstable areas. More recently, in September 2024, Indonesian authorities arrested 7 suspects believed to be ISIS-inspired who were planning to attack Pope Francis during his visit to Indonesia. The plot reportedly stemmed from anger over Francis's visit to a historic mosque and the disruption of a broadcast Muslim call to prayer. Such threats demonstrate both the global impact of Francis's interfaith outreach efforts and the controversy they sometimes provoke. News of the Pope's death sparked a wave of reactions from around the world. Global leaders expressed condolences and praised his legacy, while social media platforms were flooded with both tributes and criticism, reflecting the divisive nature of some of his progressive reforms. In his last public appearance, Pope Francis demonstrated his enduring concern for global conflicts, particularly the situation in Gaza. His Easter message, delivered by a Vatican official, was deeply compassionate. It continued with a heartfelt focus on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. In his final Easter address, Francis also made a passionate appeal for peace, urging immediate action. He further emphasized his concern for those suffering from hunger and violence. On Reddit, a user on the Our Catholicism forum wrote movingly, "I am heartbroken. Pope Francis was a beacon of humility and compassion, always fighting for the poor and the marginalized." Meanwhile, on X, some users took a more critical stance, with one writing, "Many of us do not think Pope Francis is good for Christianity with his progressive non-biblical beliefs. His death is not a cause for celebration, but a relief for many." Another X user made an eerily prescient prediction from February 2025. "Oh, there will be a day and a half of chaos here when Pope Francis dies. Many will not be able to contain themselves from releasing over a decade of pent-up frustration." The timing of Pope Francis's death on Easter Monday, The day that celebrates Christ's resurrection in the Catholic tradition adds a layer of complex symbolism to the story. For believers, the timing could be seen as sacred. For skeptics, it could raise questions about whether the announcement was timed to coincide with the Holy Day for maximum symbolic effect, regardless of when the death actually occurred. What is indisputable is that the death of Pope Francis marks the end of an important era for the Catholic Church. Born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Buenos Aires, Argentina, on December 17, 1936, he became the first pope from the Americas, the first from the Southern Hemisphere, and the first Jesuit to hold the office. His pontificate has been characterized by efforts to reform the church apparatus, address climate change, engage with other religious traditions, and shift the focus to mercy and tolerance, all while confronting the Church's ongoing sexual abuse crisis and internal divisions between progressives and traditionalists. His final months, marked by serious illness and swirling rumors, added a complex coda to this legacy. The public nature of his health struggles, combined with the Vatican's unprecedented transparency in dealing with disinformation, created a unique historical moment in which an ancient institution confronted the challenges of the digital age in front of a global audience. As the Catholic Church now enters the formal mourning period known as sede vacante, empty throne, and begins preparations for the conclave to elect Francis's successor, the events of February-April 2025 will surely be studied by scholars of religious history and crisis communications. The lessons are manifold, about institutional adaptation in the digital age, about the persistence of conspiracy theories despite evidence to the contrary, and about the challenges of maintaining credibility when coincidences create unfortunate narrative connections. For the world's 1.3 billion Catholics, this period represents both an end and a beginning, the closing of Francis's revolutionary reign and the opening of a new chapter whose contours are still being shaped. For Vatican watchers and media analysts, it offers a case study in how even the most ancient and powerful institutions must constantly adapt their communication strategies to the realities of the modern information ecosystem. When Cardinal Kevin Farrell announced the Pope's death this morning, the statement was simple and direct, without the complexities of the previous story. Pope Francis had died peacefully at his residence. But for those who followed the entire story from the hospitalization in February through the rumors in March to the reality in April, this simple truth came amid a complex backdrop of speculation, denial, verification, and finally confirmation. In this sense, Pope Francis's final chapter teaches us something profound about truth, timing, and perception in the modern world. Being right about what ultimately happens does not justify earlier statements being wrong. Yet the proximity of falsehood and truth in this timeline creates a troubling ambiguity that defies simple categorization. As the Catholic Church prepares to elect a new leader, it does so in a world where institutional power and public trust exist in an increasingly complex relationship. A fitting final lesson from a pope who has always sought to navigate the waters between tradition and necessary change. Francis's papacy is notably controversial in the United States, where his criticism of capitalism and his emphasis on climate change and migration often put him at odds with conservative Catholics. He recently clashed with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance over immigration policies. Francis criticized the Trump administration's mass deportation plans, while Vance defended them using Catholic concepts like the Ordo Amoris, drawing a rebuke from the Pope. Their meeting at Easter 2025 was said to be diplomatic but brief, suggesting limited reconciliation on these issues. Some critics, including Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, have gone so far as to accuse Francis of mishandling clerical abuse cases and of promoting a liberal agenda that plays into far-right narratives. Bishop Joseph Strickland, who will be removed from his Texas diocese in 2023, has even called him a dictator pope for what he said were his weakening of church teachings on abortion and same-sex marriage. Now, as the Church enters a formal mourning period known as Novendiales, 9 days of mourning ceremonies, attention inevitably turns to the process of electing Francis's successor and the direction the Catholic Church might take in the years ahead. The conclave to elect a new pope typically begins 15 to 20 days after a pope's death, bringing together cardinal electors from around the world in one of the oldest and most secretive electoral processes still practiced today. The question on everyone's mind is, will the next pope continue Francis's progressive vision, or will the Church choose a different path? What happens after Pope Francis dies? The pope is typically surrounded by his closest aides, and when his heart stops beating, the first person called to confirm is the Camerlengo, the Vatican's administrator and interim leader during this transition. Right now, that's Cardinal Kevin Farrell. The ritual is centuries old, and while some parts have been modernized, the tradition remains strong. In the past, the Camerlengo would call out the Pope's birth name 3 times, gently tapping his forehead with a silver hammer to confirm there was no response. Today, the hammer is no longer used, but the symbolic calling of the name is still maintained. When there is silence in response, the Pope is officially declared dead. The next task was to remove and destroy the Pope's personal ring, the fisherman's ring. This ring, unique to each pope, had been used to seal official documents. Its destruction with a silver hammer prevented any misuse after his death. It was a symbol. The man who had once carried the authority of the Church was gone, and his era was now sealed. Immediately, the Vatican entered a period of mourning. The bells of St. Peter's Basilica rang out across Rome. Black banners were raised. Flags were lowered to half-mast. The Vatican made an official announcement to the world. Within minutes, headlines exploded across the globe. The Pope had died. Whether his passing was due to age or illness or a sudden shock, the world began to hold its collective breath. Inside the Vatican, the Camerlengo is in charge, but only in a temporary capacity. He has no authority to make major decisions or enact new laws. His job is more like that of a senior executive, protecting the Pope's property, sealing his rooms, and organizing funerals. From this point on, everything proceeds according to a carefully choreographed script known as the Universi Dominici Gregis, the official constitution that governs what happens during a papal vacancy. Next comes Novendiales, a 9-day period of mourning and prayer. The body of the late pope lies in state at the Apostolic Palace first, then is transferred to St. Peter's Basilica. During this time, tens of thousands of people line up, often for hours, to get a last glimpse. Some come out of devotion, others out of reverence, some cry, some kneel, some whisper prayers and final goodbyes. Every day of Novenda, a special Mass is held in memory of the Pope. These ceremonies attract high-ranking clergy, politicians, royalty, and religious leaders from around the world. It is not uncommon to see heads of state, patriarchs, and even leaders from other religions come to honor the man who was once the voice of Catholicism. Finally, the Pope is buried, usually in the crypt beneath St. Peter's Basilica, unless he has requested otherwise. His tomb immediately becomes a sacred site, a place of pilgrimage for Catholics around the world. Now that the Pope is gone, the Catholic Church officially enters sede vacante, Latin for empty throne. This means there is no Pope and no new church laws or major decisions can be made. The papal apartments are sealed. The papal coat of arms has been adjusted to reflect this state of transition, showing 2 keys crossed under a red and gold umbrella. This symbol suggests that the church is on pause. With the throne of St. Peter empty, attention turns to one thing only: electing a new pope. That responsibility falls to the Council of Cardinals, senior church leaders from around the world. Only cardinals under the age of 80 are eligible to vote, and there are usually about 120 of them. They gather in Rome within 15 to 20 days of a pope's death, spending time on transportation, funeral rites, and initial meetings called general assemblies. These early meetings are crucial. The cardinals discuss the state of the church, scandals, developments, losses, and ideological tensions. The church faces big issues: abuse scandals, declining membership in the West, a surge in Africa and Asia, debates about LGBTQ+ inclusion, the role of women, celibacy, and modernization. Everyone has an opinion, and everyone is whispering about potential candidates. Then comes the most secretive and dramatic part: the conclave, held in the Sistine Chapel. The conclave was held behind closed doors. The cardinals were cut off from the outside world. No phones, no internet, no communication. They were surrounded by security, Vatican Guards, and a level of privacy that felt almost medieval. Before the vote began, they all took an oath of secrecy. Violation of this oath was grounds for immediate excommunication. The voting process begins. Each cardinal writes a name, folds the paper, and drops it into a golden chalice. After each round, the ballots are counted and burned. If no candidate receives the 2/3 majority needed to be elected, the smoke from the chimney atop the Sistine Chapel turns black, signaling to the world that there is no new pope. This process can last for days, sometimes more than a week. But when the white smoke finally cleared, it was a moment of global awe. People rushed to St. Peter's Square. Bells rang across the city. The world knew a new pope had been elected. The new pope then made his first appearance on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. The moment was filled with drama. A cardinal steps forward and announces, "Habemus Papam, we have a pope." The new leader then gives his first blessing to the world. He may smile, wave, or stand solemnly. Some cry, some crack jokes. All, in that moment, feel the weight of centuries on their shoulders. He also reveals his new name, chosen to reflect his mission or honor a predecessor. When Cardinal Bergoglio became Pope Francis, it was a nod to Saint Francis of Assisi, a clear sign of his commitment to simplicity and humility. The name set the stage for the kind of leadership the new pope intended to bring. The reaction was global and immediate. Churches held spontaneous masses, social media exploded. News anchors rushed to deliver cutting commentary, and Catholics everywhere began to wonder, what would this pope be like? A reformer, a traditionalist, a bridge builder, or a warrior behind closed doors? But things are tense. The new pope must now lead a 2,000-year-old institution that is both beautiful and burdensome. He inherits not only a spiritual flock, but also a powerful global presence, with diplomatic relations with more than 180 countries and moral authority on issues like climate change, war, poverty, and human rights. Some popes choose to stay silent. Others become global voices. The death of a pope also reopens old debates within the Church. Conservatives may hope for a return to strict doctrine. Progressives may yearn for modernization. Many Catholics hope for transparency, accountability, and healing. The vacuum left by a pope's death brings all these hopes and fears to the surface. And while the Vatican remains traditional, this is still a very human moment. Cardinals form coalitions. The lobbying, albeit behind closed doors, goes on. Different regions of the world, Africa, Asia, Latin America, push for a candidate from their region. Each new pope reshapes the look, priorities, and tone of the Church. So while the world watches the white smoke rise and cheers at a smiling man in a white robe, inside the Vatican, centuries-old power plays are still taking place. The new pope then holds his inauguration mass, a stunning extravaganza that draws religious and political leaders from every corner of the globe. For many, it was their first glimpse into how he presented himself, how he preached, and what kind of leadership he would bring to the papacy. For ordinary Catholics, it was a new beginning. Whether they loved or criticized the previous pope, the Church now had a new voice, a new face, and perhaps a new direction. For some, it brought hope. For others, it brought anxiety. Either way, history was moving. On the international stage, the death of a pope and the election of his successor can have major ripple effects. Catholic-majority countries may declare days of national mourning. Political leaders offer condolences, attend funerals, and begin to assess how the new pope might influence everything from diplomacy to public opinion. The Vatican's stance on issues such as abortion, same-sex marriage, economic inequality, and war often influence debates across continents. Do you dare to face the terrifying secrets from the heart of the Vatican? The chilling testimony of the guards about the last moments of Pope Francis's life has exposed the truth that has shocked the world. How do you feel? Comment now to share your thoughts. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to not miss the next mysteries from the Holy See. Thank you and goodbye. See you again.